Ladies and gentlemen, Cowboys Nation, football fans, and sports lovers everywhere, brace yourselves because what just unfolded in Dallas has sent shockwaves rippling across the entire NFL landscape. And I'm not saying this lightly, this might be the most stunning and emotionally charged development we've seen from the Cowboys in years. And if you've been following the offseason even a little bit, you already knew things were heating up. But no one, absolutely no one, was prepared for what just happened as the Dallas Cowboys announced a massive, unexpected departure that has not only stunned fans, but also disrupted the delicate chemistry in the locker room and left the front office scrambling to calm a fan base that has been teetering on the edge ever since last season's postseason meltdown. And this isn't some routine roster tweak or the release of a bottom-of-the-depth chart player to free up a few cap dollars. This is the departure of a cornerstone, a veteran voice who has defined the team's defensive identity for over a decade, because we're talking about the sudden, abrupt, and honestly heartbreaking exit of DeMarcus Lawrence, a player who has lined up in the trenches, made game-changing plays, and worn the star with fierce pride. And what makes it all even more shocking is that there was no build-up, no advance rumors swirling among beat reporters, no late-night tweets from plugged-in insiders, just a short, sterile team statement followed by Lawrence's emotional farewell. And in an instant, a generation of Cowboys fans were left sitting there asking, what just happened? Why now? And what does this mean for 2025? As disbelief spread like wildfire the moment the news broke, because many assumed it had to be fake, maybe some garbled contract negotiation leak or a misunderstanding, since Lawrence had been the face of the defense for so long, a relentless pass rusher, a vocal locker room presence, and a symbol of continuity whose name was chanted in a T&T stadium every time he brought down a quarterback. But the reality set in quickly. This was no mistake. DeMarcus Lawrence was officially out. And as if that bombshell weren't enough, reports started surfacing that this wasn't strictly about cap space or an aging veteran's decline, but rather a deeper, more philosophical divide, with insiders suggesting Lawrence had been growing frustrated for months over how the team handled its playoff collapses, feeling that the defensive scheme had become stale and that leadership no longer valued his role or his influence in the same way they once did. And while this wasn't purely about money, the timing couldn't have been worse, because the Cowboys were already dealing with roster transitions and now have to replace not just Lawrence's production, but his leadership and swagger, which fans instantly recognized as irreplaceable, and social media exploded Reddit threads lit up with speculation and tribute. X was full of heartbreak and outrage, and longtime season ticket holders were threatening to bail unless the team offers some clarity about what the plan is, because this isn't just another off-season headline. It feels different. It feels like something fundamental was lost. And even as everyone was still digesting Lawrence's departure, the next wave hit with the news that Jordan Lewis, the ever-dependable slot cornerback who quietly anchored the secondary, was also leaving. And while his exit didn't carry quite the same shock as Lawrence's, it still stung deeply because Lewis had been steady, reliable, and respected, and now reports suggest he's already signing with a rival NFC team, adding salt to the wound. And with both Lawrence and Lewis gone, the Cowboys' defense suddenly feels perilously thin, just weeks before training camp, a moment when you're supposed to be tightening up your plans, not scrambling to fill holes the size of entire leadership pillars. And so now the spotlight swings firmly to Micah Parsons, the third-year phenom, who is no longer just the electric playmaker, but is expected to be the heart, the soul, and the anchor of this defense. The one everyone looks to when adversity hits, and while Parsons has the rare talent to carry that load, it's an enormous burden to bear, because behind him, you have rotational guys like Dante Fowler Jr. and Sam Williams, who have flashed potential but haven't proven they can handle the relentless pressure being the front line week after week. And on the back end, with Jordan Lewis out, the Cowboys must rely on a mix of youth and hope. Trayvon Diggs is coming back from injury, and while there's optimism about his recovery, there's also no guarantee he'll return to all-pro form right away, which means names like Darren Bland and Israel Mukuamu suddenly matter more than ever. And that's a gamble in a conference loaded with elite quarterbacks and dangerous receivers. But while the front office scrambles to fill the void with mid-tier signings and an emphasis on development, everyone knows experience can't be manufactured overnight, and in the NFL, lack of it is often punished brutally. Yet, what has fueled the frustration even more is the team's silence. No extended press conferences, no transparent explanation from Jerry Jones, no clear answers about whether this is a short-term cap strategy to set up massive extensions for CeeDee Lamb, or maybe even Dak Prescott, whose own future is still unclear, or whether this is the start of a hidden rebuild that will transform the roster over the next few seasons. And in that vacuum of communication, fans are left to fill in the blanks, and what they've filled them with is a mix of sadness, skepticism, and outright fury, because when leaders like Lawrence and Lewis walk out, it changes everything, not just on Sundays, but in every meeting, every practice rep, every rookie's first day. And the ripple effect is real as position groups lose their mentors, coaches lose their trusted sounding boards, and a team that prided itself on toughness suddenly has to reinvent its culture on the fly, all while the offense faces its own mountain of pressure to compensate, with Dak Prescott needing to play the best football of his career, CeeDee Lamb carrying the WR1 torch under a massive new contract, and players like Brandon Cooks, Tony Pollard, and J.K. Ferguson expected to shoulder an even greater share of the load, because while last year's offense was solid, this year it must be elite just to keep Dallas in the race, and hovering over all of it is the reality that Mike McCarthy is coaching for his job, with the fan base more divided than ever, some still believing in his system and pointing to regular season success, while others see a stale vision and are calling for a fresh voice before this window closes entirely. And in the end, this is a franchise at a crossroads, a team with big dreams, big personalities, and bigger expectations. Yet right now, the future feels more uncertain than it has in a decade, because the departures of DeMarcus Lawrence and Jordan Lewis have rocked the foundation, and how the Cowboys respond in the coming weeks will determine not just whether 2025 is a success, but whether this team stays relevant or starts a slow decline. So buckle up, because the spotlight is brighter than ever. And if history has taught us anything, it's that when the Cowboys are in the middle of the NFL stage, drama is never far behind.